Do you know that no Southerner ever created any state in Nigeria? Do you actually know that there's no state that was created democratically in Nigeria? All the states, 30 states included Nigeria, were all created by the Northerners and by the military governments.
You cannot separate the North and then the military dictatorship because outside the Obasanjo and Aguirre, I don't know anybody else who has been military president who is not from the North.
And some of them barely stayed
and both of them never created any states.
Yes.
They actually had to do with the one they had inherited. That is the North, the West, and then the Southeastern state.
Yes.
That they had existed until the period during the war. And then in a means to balkanize the warring faction, what was his name? Yakubu Gowon had to create divide the 3 regions into 12.
Divide the 4 regions.
The four regions into 12 states.
Yeah.
All right, isolating the south, the current day southeast, into East Central State.
Yeah.
And then the southeast was the name tag for Calabar, and within that enclave, as you have it.
Then, I think in 1960, during the war, when the war started, Yakubu created 12.
Yes.
And then, followed by Murtala Mohammed when he was overthrown. And from then, we moved over to, who was the next person after Murtala Mohammed?
Ibrahim Babangida.
Yep. And then
Sani Abacha.
Sani Abacha.
Yep.
And we don't have time to list all the states that were created, but if you check very well, you find out that the problem with Nigeria is numerous. Like, you can just imagine that the creation of the states, which most times these things are very, very important in other regions, because these things, for you to create states, create some other, the boundaries and every other thing has to be done based on some standard factors. You must consider some things like maybe
relationship between the new states that you are trying to create. You talk about the religious, whether there will be religious rancor if you create these two, if you form a merger between these two states, whether they are ethnically,
they can stay together,
they are ethnically compatible, all right? Or do they have common ancestry?
If this religious, even some religious sentiment also can work.
Or shared even economic interest.
Or historical interest also.
Yes, of course.
And these things we are not actually considered. Sometimes you see some states that you just look at the states and some of the states, imagine you joining like a partly Muslim state, maybe 40% Muslim.
And then it's gonna just use Kaduna outrightly, because that is the situation in Kaduna. And that's why on
50% Christian and Muslim.
And at everybody in southern Kaduna literally are
Christians.
It's a pagan population. So because painting all of them Christian,
they're also Muslims there. There are also southern Kaduna.
There are Muslims in southern Kaduna, and there are Christians, and there are pagans.
But
all right,
they are majorly,
and then
Christians.
there are Muslims too. So it's a melting point of these two major religion. Now the challenge in the state creation is the people's involvement in all these things. I feel most times states are being just created or was created by the military just to pay homage to maybe someone they liked, or somebody who must have they've been a profiteer one way or the other.
You know, they had the Supreme Military Council there.
Yes, of course.
Most times it wasn't actually unilaterally they took those kind of decisions, but it's not democratically, it's not debated, it's not done by the House. A lot of things are not taken into consideration. But some of the times they were able to form committees, appointed some civilians who wrote some other reports, and upon the reports, they embarked on those kind of things. But even then, you look at the states and find out that most of these things, if these things were people-oriented, if these things were done by people, and a lot of things, like you said, were considered like the ethnic affinity, the cultural relationship, the historical ties also.
And economic interest
also were considered. A lot of the frictions we have will not have them. Now,
just take for instance, at the moment now, I just like you said, no civilian regime. I don't even believe that they have the capacity to create states the right way, just like the military have done. I don't see any difference between them. Because if they are able to have the balls to create a state and then address the injustice in some places that actually feel aggrieved, especially the Southeast, I believe, is a personal opinion, I believe that the best option that for the Igbo, maybe the 6 states for the Igbo, just for the principle of equity and equilibrium to be applied, then you create Anioma from Delta State and make it the 6th state in the Southeast rather than the proposition or the proposal of Olo, which is a further balkanization of an already existing Igbo territory. Now, what they should do in the case of Anioma is to bring all the Eka Igbo, join them with the Anioma people, all right? And then let them form the 6th Igbo state, which I believe on its own will be very prosperous because of a large wealth deposit of crude oil in the land. So it's going to still be very prosperous.
Yeah, let's see how that works out, because I read somewhere where they say that the Cross River, what's it called? There's a state in Cross River also that they're pushing very hard. And they say that one has passed second reading from the time I read a story about it. So the event has even overtaken the Anioma state, and they are pushing for, and you know, Senate President is
it's from the region.
So there are
it will be more amenable to creating an extra state for his people.
Than creating another one from Delta and part of Edo.
Now, if you see, one of the biggest challenge we have with Nigerian democracy is that all the colonial and then the military relics that was used as a tool of balkanization, divide and rule, separatism, those shackles have not been disentangled.
Yes.
We've allowed them to persist the way they are.
The creating state is very difficult because the Ikan guys, the Ikan people, they are part of the Benin. I listened to the guy who is actually pushing for the creation of this Ned Woko, one of the Twitter spaces, and he said that he met former governor of Edo State and frontally asked him, if I move for this, will you support it? The man told him no. For the obvious reason that, you know, Edo is partly an oil producing state.
Oh, yes.
And that particular place is trying to annex the ones that have the major of the oil. Say he will not agree. Simple. He said he told him that.
Yes.
That it's not as if he's not interested. You understand what he said, historical order. But for economic reasons also, this state, you are taking away our jewel and you are taking to other states. Say he will not sign it.
Now, it's not about because these are one of the reasons I say that most of those states were created arbitrarily anyway.
Yes.
Because if there were actually proper consultation, you do not take cultural ties and historical ties supersede that the last one, which is economic tie.
Yes.
It's just, for instance, now the people of Ede, culturally, they are here. They are not neither here nor there.
Well,
they are not core Igbo, all right, but they are not also Idoma. Neither are they Kogi people, all right. So they are distinct people of their own identity, all right. Now they are in a state of quagmire. Now, if you must do a lot of things like this, like create state, what you do is you try to map out people who have similar cultural ties. You group them together. People, even in the creation of local government, you see all these things exist. You see people who are very quite different. You break them into two. One part is in the other side. The other part is left elsewhere.
The only thing that is just common among them is just the contiguity of the landmark. Just join people together and they are battling politically.
Now I take an instance for you. If you come to, for instance, in Enugu now, you see the Okonano people, for instance, are more historically and culturally, we are more aligned to Nde Ihe Owerekot, Ogugu, Abu Ogugu. Then the Okonano people, which is previously called Akebwe, forms a whole sect of people called Ntuegbenese. That is the five kingdom settlement. All right. Now, if in the creation of local government, you see these people of similar lineage, and then you separate them, one is in Ogu, the other one is in Nkanu, then what are you doing?
No, it's like that everywhere.
All right.
That was the work of because even during the local government creation also, they were actually mostly involved in creating local government.
Yeah, they create a state and then they partition them
a lot.
Be it as, just like the white men during the Berlin Conference, just on the tables,
arbitrary,
are just allocated slots of Africa for themselves. Now, and I believe that if there must be any further state creation, that the people should be consulted, and the interest of the people who are willing to join any state should be, like their choices. You allow them to make their own decisions. You don't just come and lord it over. Because I hear a lot of people saying that in the creation of Olo, that what was it called? That some part of Anambra would be included, and then you see people.
Another problem.
You see a lot of.
May not pass it.
And then you look at it. Anambra too is a very small, at least one of the smallest states in the south is anyway. All right, and then you want to still balkanize them. All right, it's of no use.